Really excited to have all of you all here today. Welcome to this week's foundation session, Unlocking the Core Message in Your Personal Brand. This is a professional development series for the entrepreneur, bridging the gap between the technical and the soft leadership skills. And our goal is to prove that there is another way to build your big ideas, one that prioritizes community over competition and values alignment over empty hustle. This series is brought to you by me, and actually maybe I can show my face and we can stop sharing me, hi, and my team. Lauren is on the screen as well, from our team here at the Nest. We're a cultural strategy project using design and events to connect powerful communities with important projects and social movements that are building a thriving future. Hi, Julian. It's so fun to see people that I know from so many different pockets of my life joining us here today. And as I'm talking about our team, like I said, we have Lauren, who is our public programs manager, who has helped me to put this particular series together. This is our kind of relaunch of our public programs that we used to host, and we have reignited this year. So I'm really excited to have Lauren on the team to help me bring this into the world. And I don't think we have any of the rest of our team on just yet, but we, as a collective, have been really looking forward to getting into today's topic in particular. This space of foundations is a space where we can learn alongside our peers, where we can be rooted in the lessons that I've learned, as well as the questions that I've raised and asked myself and other folks in my community, as a business owner who is committed to community and committed to really trying to build a business by leading with my values. And I am Lee Robbie Gaiman Jones. I'm the founder of The Nest. I'm also the chief creative officer here at The Nest. We are still a fairly young business, but from the beginning, even as a branding and design agency, thinking about how to tell our story and clearly articulate what we do, but also engage our audience has been a really big topic for us. So specifically, I've grappled with developing my story as a founder over and over again. So I'm particularly excited to have this session today on personal branding, and I'm delighted to introduce you all to Claire De Leon of Field Note Communications. After Claire's presentation, we'll have a Q&A. And so as we're going, please feel free to drop questions into the chat or comments into the chat. Lauren and I will be tracking those so we can engage them during the Q&A. And otherwise, I hope you all are able to take something from today's session that sparks a curiosity or answers a question or leads you to the next part of your work and branding what it is that you do. And with that, I will let Claire say more about herself and introduce herself to you all.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lee. So wonderful to be here with y'all. And thank you all for joining, and Lauren for your support and kind of strategizing this and putting everything together. I'm Claire De Leon. I use she, her pronouns. I studied public health and qualitative research, and I've done nonprofit and advocacy communications for the last 15 years. And I manage a communications consultancy that primarily works with changemakers, advocates, coalitions, funders, and nonprofits called Field Note. One of my very favorite things to do is work with people who have big ideas that they want to get out into the world, but who may not have a platform or a clear strategy or a really clear message in place to realize the change that they're seeking. So often I find that entrepreneurs and really people who should be the positioned experts on any given issue have so much to say, have so many solutions, but haven't quite connected the dots between how to distill their message strategically so that it influences the people they need it to influence most. So, like we mentioned, I'm going to share a few slides, share some ideas to hopefully get things percolating for you all, and give you some formula that I use when working with people to really go in deep and develop core messages with them. We'll have plenty of time for kind of questions, discussion at the end. And then, like Lee and Lauren mentioned, if you have questions out and you want to drop them in the chat, please do. But I hope that this is so helpful and useful to you. So we can just jump right in. And I think, thank you, Lauren, for pulling up the deck. Can you all see that? Am I just not seeing it?
No, it's coming. It's en route. Here we go.
And I can even just start while we're beautifully pulling it up. I mean, core messaging is really all about what you want to be known for. So when we talk about personal branding, we talk about really putting your story out there. We're sending signals all the time, especially, you all who are advocates, who are leading organizations, who are developing businesses as solopreneurs. You're putting signals out for what you stand for and what you want to be known for. Um, and thank you, Lauren. You can even just go right on over to our new mayor of New York. Um, Wonderful. So when we're talking about core message and branding, it's really about what you're known for. And I'm going to ask you all to just hold in your mind and think of someone you love, who's done work that you admire, who's putting issues out into the world, or maybe a business person who started something really wonderful. What do you think their core message is? Like, if you had to kind of distill it into a sentence, someone who comes to mind for you, what would you say about what they're really standing for? And I have a photo of the new mayor of New York up here, Zoran Mamdani, and I saw that someone was joining us from Brooklyn. I don't know if there are any other New Yorkers joining, but I put this photo up because love how strong the message was in his campaign. He was talking about affordability for everyone. Any interview that I saw, any clips that he gave, any slogans really came back down to the platform that he was standing on, which was New York should be affordable for everyone, and that he has policy solutions, he has specific ideas, he has specific anecdotes and stories that all sort of funnel back to this same message of what's right for the city is affordability. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to come off mute. If you have like a great example or burning example, or just drop it in the chat, someone that you're thinking of who has a really clear core message. But others, we can just keep the slides moving. Feel free to drop it in the chat if there's someone that you're admiring that you're thinking of. So, why do we want to prioritize this and work on it? When your core message is really clear, your ideas become even more influential. Easy to say, kind of hard to make happen. So, people can remember what you're sharing with them. People want to hear from people, but we have so much competing for our attention. It kind of goes without saying that clarity is really your friend. So when you, as the spokesperson, you, as the person who's sharing, start to kind of get sick of a message, or you're like, this is the one thing I've been harping on for so long, that's probably about the point that other people are starting to remember it and understand that as what you stand for. When your core message is really clear, you're able to thread through your solutions and help make sense of the world and help to move forward the offering, whatever it might be that's your hot take or your recommendation, the thing that you're putting forward. So, we're thinking a little bit about the why, but we're going to spend a little more time in the moments we have together, kind of structuring out the how, like Lee said. You all joined this because you clearly think the core message is important, but how do you kind of distill your story into elements that you can share? Okay, so there's four pieces that I'm going to share with you today, and the first, and I would say most important, is to start with strategy. So when you're thinking about what makes a good message for you, what can really help support your personal brand, you need to understand your why. A message could be like good or not, right? But it needs to be strategic for you. And a basic strategy is going to be answering questions like who, what, where, why, and when. What's the goal? What are you actually trying to do? Who's the audience that you need to reach to sort of make that change real in the world? Who needs to take action to make your goal come about? What will happen once they understand what you're sharing? How will you motivate them, right? And then how will you know, like, what makes it actually measurable and real, less intangible? This kind of strategy, like strategy basics, is true for entrepreneurs, it's true for advocates. Where you are as a spokesperson in relation to the business or the big idea that you're championing, who can you most effectively reach to move to action? And then, yeah, what action do you want to see happen? So when you start from that strategic place, you're able to then move into the actual elements of a core message. And I'm going to pause here and say that if you're kind of having trouble getting started, or you're thinking like the strategy piece doesn't make sense, always start with that, kind of live there until you really have it concretely down, and then move into more of the pieces that will actually make up the soup, if you will, of your message. Okay, so I said I was going to talk about 4 things. Strategy and starting with strategy is one. The other 3 are all here on this slide, and we're going to walk through them one by one. And then we're going to finish by sort of showing a picture of how it can fit all together. So, your story, your expertise, and the opportunity at hand are the 3 elements that I have found can come together so well to help crystallize a core message. So we're going to start with story and share a couple of examples and questions that you can think through to develop that out. Okay, so story is a really important cornerstone of your message. And that's because lived experience is really expertise. Your story is unique, authentic, and real to you. It's what will help really make sure that what you're sharing in your brand is personal and real, and that resonates with people. But kind of like Lee mentioned, I think people can have trouble understanding, do I need to be comprehensive about my story? What of my story is the, anecdote or elements that I can really hold on to and pull out over time? What feels real to you? So when we're talking about strategic communications, it really is about deciding and sort of editing down into what simple stories or what smaller anecdotes can help build credibility with your audience. Again, kind of going back to your why and the change you're seeking, and position you as a logical sort of conveyor of the information or the message that you're giving. It's not about being comprehensive. So I want to just like give people that idea. It's not about needing to share your full story for authenticity. You really can't be comprehensive and strategic at the same time. You need to be able to edit. So when you're thinking about where to go in terms of like all of your rich story and all of your experiences, you can kind of, I would say, run through these elements and help to narrow down on the stories that you think best position you. So you can think about your identity, your lived experience, what helps to build an authentic bridge between you and your audience and feels real and true for you to share. You can think about personal wonderings, like what makes you curious about the thing that you're working on, the thing that you're trying to solve, the field that you're in. You can think about framing with trust, like, again, what credentials you with the people that you're wanting to move, and what will help make sure that they understand where you're coming from and your perspective as your own experience. Sometimes it can be helpful to almost do a mind map and like dump everything from your story. Ask yourself questions like, what have my early experiences helped bring me to the philosophy that I have or shape my work and my wonderings? You can think about your best and worst experiences, really mind map it all out. And then I would go through and highlight some specific anecdotes that feel most strategic and most logical, that help relate to, again, the change that you're trying to seek and the audience that you want to best reach. Okay, so there's some questions on the screen around story, but we're going to move to the second element of this triangle for your core message, and that is your expertise. So expertise is the next cornerstone here. And I will say expertise knowing that we are complex people who are often pulling from so many areas of learning and knowledge, and that mix is what makes us unique, what makes us able to reach more niche audiences. But when you're thinking about your expertise, you can go broadly. You can think about obviously school, work experiences, formal trainings. You can also think about what credentials you, again, and what you amplify with your audience, what you draw from in practice, and how to best represent that. So it's actually great if you're weaving from many threads. Some of the leaders that I've worked with are pulling from even disparate schools of thought. And that's something that they want to champion in their core message and be able to say, I'm someone who's really curious and I draw from, community perspective and my lived experience, as well as, this, that, and the other. So when you're thinking through this cornerstone, your expertise, and what you want to be known for. You can ask yourself, of all your experiences, does one stand out more than the other? What do you want to be known for that you might not be? What are you known for that maybe you want to reposition or think in a different way? You can always come at it and think about it in the negative space. Like, what do you not want to be known for? And sometimes, especially with brand exercises, that helps to build some clarity about what you do want. So, thinking about your strengths and expertise. And then the last piece to this kind of message triangle is the opportunity at hand. And again, this gets back to knowing the change that you want to realize in the world and who you're reaching. So, this is a little bit about where your message, your story, your experience meets the audience that you have, and where your strategy sort of comes to real life. What's happening in the world of your audience that you can offer solutions around? What big questions is your audience grappling with? What problems exist in your field that you wish people spent more time solving? You could also consider kind of the zeitgeist, like what's happening in the world around trust or disillusionment, and consider the core messages that will help to position you as a particular expert, answer questions in a way that aligns with your strategy. Okay, so here's some questions to get you thinking. When you put it all together, it can look like this. So I like this visualization because I'll say the idea being that you are sharing a prescription, an opinion, a way of being that sits at the intersection of all these topics. It should sing in the same songbook as your story, your expertise, and the opportunity at hand. From your story, we have the identities that shape you, your lived experience. Your expertise is about your offerings and your learnings, your practices. And then the opportunity is about what your audience is looking for and the big questions. So this is all just questions that can help you distinguish what's strategic and hone in on a message and a story about you, your brand that will be influential. Some examples of what core messages can look like. They can look like everyone deserves health, politics should be kind, leading with heart is powerful, or like Mayor Mondami's experience message is New York should be affordable to everyone. So the simplicity of it is a benefit. Once you get more into your own platform, your thought leadership, what you're posting, what you're sharing in interviews, you can actually explain the different elements of it. So, talking about a specific story or talking about specific expertise as a part of that longer message, but it should all sort of ring true with the main message that you land on. If we kind of go back to Mayor Mondami as an example, you know, his story as a New Yorker, some of his personal experiences, his expertise in public office, really holding billionaires accountable, and then this opportunity to say, we're looking for more affordability. Like, obviously, things are so out of control. They all sort of hone in on his core message. We're seeing a lot of, you know, progressive politicians talking more about being the better option from someone corrupt, but instead he sort of chose this vision that was really about saying what could be. And we just saw how powerful and how influential and motivating that is. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So I would love to hear from y'all if you want to come off mute. I think it's a great place to start with your audience is to think about who you're trying to reach and what they're curious about. What big questions are you wanting to answer with your core message? It's a great place to start. So I'm curious to hear from y'all, and you can also feel free to ask any questions about the slides that we covered.
I have a question. So how, like, in terms of the core messaging, is this something that you feel like can go for, like, I'm trying to launch an event, like one big event. Is that something that you feel like could translate from like a personal brand message to like this is like the reason that I'm doing this and this is like the focal point of the marketing for it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I would say, I think when we're thinking about core message as it relates to personal brand, it's all these like big sweeping strategy pieces, right? And so your brand, your core message wouldn't change with like any one particular offering. Like, here I am, we're launching this big event. It's really important. It might be if there's something you're doing that is like so seminal and so aligned that it shares the same core message. Actually, like political campaigns, again, I think are a good example of that because they're all sort of like all roads lead to Rome. This is about an outcome of a campaign. But it could be that you have lots of elements of storytelling, of thought leadership, of marketing that all exist in your strategic comms ecosystem and that should align, I would say, or reflect your core message, but don't necessarily need to be like the messaging formula for that event. I think sometimes we say like more actionable messaging might have a different formula, might include a call to action. Like the opportunity agenda is a great resource around actionable messaging. It's like value, problem, solution, action. And that's a really nice outline. So depending on kind of what the event is, other like marketing copy might be more pithy, right? But I would say I would think of this as the more like strategic stake in the ground that you can come back to and know that here's where I'm trying to go with my voice. Here's the thing I really want people to know as they're interacting with me or my brand or me as a spokesperson for this organization or business. And then consider like any opportunity you have for communications. We call that like the tactics that you're putting out, whether it's running an event or posting on your TikTok or LinkedIn or IG or whatever, right? Like as sort of the individual communications, the signals that should all kind of be in sync with that strategy. Does that
That's
answer your question?
awesome. Yes, that's so helpful. Thank you. Like this is like the like I mean it's and now that you say all that I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's the core message. That makes sense." But this is like if you're checking yourself, like if you're just like doing like checks and balances with yourself every once in a while, this is like the message that you come back to. This is like the am I still resonating with my core message?
Yeah. And I would say, like, are you still resonating with your audience and the goal that you have outlined? And that's why, like, starting with the strategy and having clarity on that strategy is so important. And that can evolve. There might be times where you're saying, I'm launching this thing, and my strategy is really to connect with funders. After 5, 6 years, it might be, my strategies evolved, we're more well known, and I actually want to be influencing where the field is going in some particular way. So it's not to say that it has to always be static, but more that it's intentional and aligned with your actual like material or programmatic goals. Like, what are you really trying to make happen?
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pop off mute to say, I think that we can even, now that we're getting into questions people may have, we can even go more conversational and come out of the slide. But I did just throw into the chat the questions that Claire posed. It's also pretty open-ended if you have other questions. And I'm curious, Claire, I'm thinking about both myself and, launching the nest, but then also a lot of the clients that we work with are people who have like not one clear idea or even like three main services, but like a big ecosystem of a bunch of different projects. Like I started the Nest and I was like, yes, it is a design agency, but also we do events. And also there's these public programs. And also we started this incubator. And so I wonder, how do you, like, from your experience, how do you approach these really like multi-pronged creative solutions that people have turned into a project or a business or whatever, so that you can still get to that clear core message, but
Yeah.
feel like you're able to engage what may be like a pretty wide range of um, either services or offerings or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah. It's such a good question, and I would say it's so not unique to the nest, right? Like it's something that so many people are grappling with, even me, right? Like anyone who's thinking about how do you want to tell your story and present it when there's so much nuance. I would say the most important thing when you're thinking about strategy is to go back to the particular goal that you have and your audience kind of in relation to that goal. So if you were working with a client Lee, that was like, I'm doing like some kind of community building, I'm doing local events, I'm doing activations, we have this grant partnership, we have all these other things. Sometimes in communications we'll say like sell the brownies, not the recipe. So what is the actual goal? Like what will happen materially because of the change that you're seeking, or all these different activities that you're putting forward? um, what is the difference? Like how will things catalyze? How will things actually look different in a community or in our state or in our country, right? Or like with this particular audience of creators from the thing that we're doing. Um, and again, that's about like going back to the audience. You can either think of it as like, I have this goal. I want our healthcare system to be working for people and not for insurance companies. And then you can say, like, how would that look different? And who can I specifically try to reach? Is it doctors? Is it the legislators, insurance providers? Is it constituents who are actually like working within this system? How can I talk to them about that in such a way where I'm sharing like my experience, either someone who's also navigated that, or someone who's researched it, right? And kind of pulling from those examples. So again, like I would either go back to the strategy, either go back to like your goal, the thing that you're saying, like, here's what I am really trying to achieve through all of these like wonderful, beautiful, abundant creative outputs and all these different channels. Like, that's great. Or think of it like, here's my audience. What do they need that I can actually help to fill in some gaps for? And I'm going to say this is not unequivocal, like always this way, but often when I'm working with organizations who are sort of at the beginning of a journey, we're founding something, we're starting something, it's more about understanding that goal, like, and that's so related to their mission. Like, why do you exist? What are you trying to do? And then we're backwards mapping, who are you reaching? When entities, leaders, advocates, entrepreneurs, businesses, organizations have been around for a while, and their mission is already so well established, often it's then about sort of checking back in with the audience. Are you still connected to an actual group of people who you actually need to hear what you're saying? And I think then those key questions, which thank you for dropping them in the chat, like what are the questions that your audience is really grappling with or thinking about? Lack of trust, or thinking about infrastructures breaking down, we're thinking about how to stay connected as a community. Like there are so many kind of big questions in the zeitgeist. Like, what does it really look like for the people you're trying to reach? And how can you offer some message, solution, and really like package up your brand, your message in a way that meets them where they're at and really understands their realities? And I also thank you, Julian, in the chat. I love that. Sell the brownies, not the recipe. I cannot take credit for that. That's Anat Ansario. She's a wonderful communication strategist. And yeah, I just think it's so fitting for so much of what we're talking about. And we're talking about really good messaging that meets people where they're at. So for you all who are on the line and joining us, do you all have core messages in mind? Is messaging work something that you've engaged with before? I saw a comment in the chat early on. I think it might have been from you, Julian, who said, like, I'm a storyteller, I've worked in storytelling, but it's so hard to kind of draw my own story out. I'm really curious, yeah, how this resonates with you all, and if anyone has particular questions or just like what this is bringing up for you around storytelling. Thanks for raising your hand.
I mean, I can share a little bit there. Thank
Yeah.
you for this. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's just the funny irony of like that what I do day in day out is not totally dissimilar to this. Some differences maybe, but same general playground, I guess. But what I'm really appreciating is just the balance that you're speaking to between story and sort of why is it your work to do, like the expertise piece, and then speaking to the opportunity. And I was really liking, that phrase about the brownie versus the recipe is like, for me, I feel like sometimes I can get wrapped up in, all the how or the what it looks like or the this and the that, as opposed to like, no, you're gonna have a dope ass like narrative to use in whatever way you need. Like that's what we're coming back to. Like that's what it is. Like, if you only leave with one thing. So it's just a good reminder to think about those balances. And so I think what I was thinking about is like, what are creative ways to dig into the expertise part, and like how to like kind of share that, and even in story, right, share that via story is what I'm
Mhm.
thinking about coming out of this, and weighing it against some of the ways we currently talk about our work. So yeah, thank you for this.
And I think that's such a good, yeah, I love that. That really resonates with me. And as another like, um, learn a phrase that people use sometimes for communications is the cobbler's shoes. Like people who are communicators and storytellers, I think are so often wonderful at helping to steward others. And then it can sometimes come to like our own personal branding or whatever. And you're like, wait, I'm like,
It's
I'm the behind
embarrassing.
the, I'm helping you. I will say in my own like kind of personal branding exercise moving into field note and establishing that, I thought about it a lot. And I think one good example is like it would be um, it would be easy for me to omit the research background that I have because so much of my strategic communications is really about like practice. And I worked in kind of nonprofits. I worked in like big statewide coalition organizations doing advocacy. Like that's so much more what I draw from. But I will always lead with the research piece of my work and even wanted my branding and field note to somewhat reflect that because I think curiosity and really deep listening and kind of listening for that so what is truly like the thing I can always offer partners. And so that I did this message map for myself and I had to kind of come back to like what are people looking for if they might want to work with me, what can I offer, what would I hope people are working on more. And I think the triangle or kind of graphic we shared is an invitation to just like dump as many words, as many ideas that spring to mind from those elements as possible down, and then just start to look for patterns. And it can be an exercise where you'll see like, oh, it's about curiosity, and then okay, how can I represent that like through my own experience and expertise? Hopefully that's helpful. Even sharing my own example now, I'm like, oh, you don't want to share your own example as a communicator. It's so funny. Maxine, your hand is up. Thank you for jumping in.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of reintroducing myself in some ways in the sense that I'm a dance artist based in Brooklyn. And I had started a project based dance company in 2019. We were preparing for a show in 2020, but of course, we know what happened in 2020. And then life was lifing, and I just did not think to go back to it. And like now we're about to have I got a grant last year. I applied for a Brooklyn Arts Council grant, telling myself if I got the grants assigned to bring the company back, and then I got it. I was like, okay. So now we have a show next Saturday, the 7th. And I feel like I'm reintroducing, like I started an IG page for it. I'm reintroducing that.
Yeah.
And so, because what I've noticed is that I've had awesome opportunities to choreograph, but I also feel like people call on me more to teach. And don't get me wrong, I love to teach dance, but I feel like the last couple of years I was like, hey guys, I make dances too. I don't just I
Mhm.
don't just teach. So I feel like I'm figuring out, like I know I want to be seen as a dance maker as well as an educator, and I feel like I'm trying to tip the balance to make it more balanced. But I don't know what, like even as an educator, I like, there are entities that call on me to try to be like Miss Hines Variety, but I also um my primary focus is contemporary and Haitian folkloric dance. And so trying to just figure out how to like make all that clear about what I'm about.
That's so important you say so. Well, one, like, congratulations on moving that forward. And that sounds so exciting just to be at
Thank
that point
you.
of starting your ID, moving it forward. That's really like, yeah, like huge congratulations. It's no small feat. And also, it really was life in 2020. So it still is. And like, putting art out into the world is the most beautiful thing. I mean, I think you just named so many elements about like your identity that you're drawing from that make you unique as a teacher, as an educator, and also that your expertise is really as a doer and not just kind of teaching from the outside, but someone who has such a hands-on experience around like choreographing and doing, right? And I wonder if there are ways that you could really succinctly like put that into your message. Bringing dance to life through all these different ways, right? And so, um, oh, cool, awesome, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Um, I think that once you know what you want to share, I would also think about like the audiences that you're trying to reach. And you could consider like some questions I'd kind of ask yourself with the scenario that you just laid out. Is it different audiences that you're trying to reach more for choreography versus teaching? And right now you're just kind of more reaching the teaching audiences? Or is it the same audience and you want them to know something different about you? Because those will kind of impact how you communicate. And that can kind of help you guide, like, when you're thinking about your strategy for social or you're starting this IG, like who you want to tap. Maybe you do more cold outreach or more community building with audiences that don't know you as well, but you want to get in choreography with. Or maybe you're just really vocal about like reminding the people who know you and love you and who have brought you in for teaching, like, hey, you know, here's my choreography, like just checking, sharing that content, like really making sure that you're being visible with it. Again, I think that gets back to like, who are you trying to reach and what do they need from you?
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your piece. Is really cool.
Thank you.
I was just gonna jump in and piggyback on what you just said too, Claire, just to kind of reiterate that piece around like digging into audience might in some ways seem so obvious, but like it took me a second to get clear on how just how many like that we have a few distinct buckets of audience at the nest. And I think initially I was just like, I'm telling everybody everything all the time. And it was part of the reason why I was getting the feedback of like, it seems like you're doing such cool things, but like also what is it? Like I'm like people couldn't land with me. And so working actually our brand strategist Vale Esqueda is on the line now with us too. And actually her coming in and working with me and also thinking about it really strategically, thinking about like from a search engine optimization or SEO standpoint, thinking about like really audience profiles. That is what allowed me to feel less like I'm a chaotic mess and nobody can understand how all the dots connect. And more like, well, actually, we do have a core message and we have kind of like offshoots to that message that are tailored to the different subsets of our overall audience. And I think it just made things a little bit more clear for our audience and easier for me to feel clear in what I was saying. So I really share that to just say that I think the value of sitting with whether professionally with like Claire or myself, like whether working professionally with somebody or just sitting by yourself and really thinking about who are you trying to reach specifically? What do you know about them? What are they into? What are they probably not going to be attracted to? That kind of work, I think is I found it easy to overlook even in the industry that I'm in. And I think is just like I can't overstate the value of spending a lot of time with that. And depending on your personality, you might be somebody who like having an audience profile that you develop, even if you do it by yourself, can really give you a lot of motivation to feel like you're talking to a person that can help to clarify and tailor your messaging.
Awesome. Well, I would so invite anyone else to drop your questions in the chat or come off mute with any questions. Wondering where to start or want some specific ideas about where you are, please join on
I'll,
in.
I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Crystal, and I have a pretty clear idea of my audience, and I think the thing I struggle with, and one of the reasons I was attracted to this webinar was the fact that, ultimately I'm doing this because I need to make money, but I do want to be a good person. And a lot of like, I'm in the marketing space. And so, especially what I work with is Adobe products, and some of it feels really icky, as far as like AI and and things like that. So to me, one of the struggles of this and why, I've kind of been having a hard time closing the loop on what I want to do is how to do this and also actually help people in the community and in different communities and build community. And so I don't know if that's too vague, but I want to do workshops to help people learn Adobe Express because it's free and it's a really strong program and it's cheaper than Canva, even if you so it's something that I feel like there's people out there who want to start a business and don't even know, like, I'm not going to do the brand part, but I can show you once you know what you want to do, if you even have a name, I can help you make two or three things for your business.
Mm.
But I also want to be, I would love to do that for free for people, but I also got rent to pay. So to me, it's that balance of that. And I'll let you talk about that. But to me, the fact that that's one of the things that really attracted me to this webinar was the fact that you all had this that was in your messaging. So good for y'all because you are following through with, I guess, the audience you want. So
Well,
that's
I
it.
would for you for having that sense of purpose in what you're doing and ideas about connecting like the skills that you can offer to actual people in ways that could be practically very useful, help people make money, like free tool. I mean, I think there's so much that you're sharing that just is very um like exciting. I think, I would say it sounds like some of the questions that you're grappling with are about your strategy, less so how to message it. And so for you, like, I think that's why it's so important to really sit with that initial piece before you go into questions or points sort of 1 through 3 about how to talk about it. Like, I would sit with that strategy piece of really what can you do? What do you want to offer with clarity to whom around particular boundaries? It doesn't need to be everything you do. It could be everything you do. You can figure out, right, like how you want to build it and manifest it and see it live and what can be like wonderful, right? Wilder things have happened. People move things forward all the time. So, but I think that that strategy piece of like being really concrete, what I would also say, like the more specific, there's that SMART acronyms, like specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, time bound. The more that you can apply that kind of specificity to your strategy, the better. Like one thing that I mentioned that I really love reminding myself of is you can't be comprehensive and strategic at the same time. You got to kind of start where you are, not try to boil the ocean, but like move forward the thing that you're moving forward and be really clear about it. So once you have that like doing piece, your own strategy mapped, then the rest can sort of flow, who you're trying to reach. It's like people who don't have a skill in Adobe but might be interested in being entrepreneurial about it. Maybe they have some internet access. Maybe there's something local that you want to do in person with people if it's sort of about community building or about bringing wealth to your community. Maybe it's totally virtual, right? But like you decide from your strategy kind of who you want to be reaching. Um, Thanks, Julian. Who you want to be reaching, right? And then you can think about how to position yourself to tell your story. And again, it's like maybe there's something that credentials you about shared experiences. Maybe someone kind of helped share with you a skill that you didn't know or like invested in you or your family, right? And that's something that you kind of want to turn around. Maybe you have deep beliefs about um, AI being built off stolen artists' content, and you really want to help make sure that there are creators who still have practical tools to build the like digital art and others that we need to, to like get things out in the world and like lead us, like really make things beautiful and interesting. And so people want to grab onto them, right? Like you can pull those parts of your message that feel real to you once you sort of have that strategy in place. I'll pause there because I feel like I could keep now. I want to like brainstorm with you, but I don't know if you have anything to add to Lee or others, or if any others have been in a similar position of kind of having an idea and wanting to get clear on the practical strategy of it. Who'd want to chime in?
I was just going to underscore what Claire said. I totally agree with those suggestions. I think that's great. And I have found with the Nest, like, there's 1 million design agencies. There's like a billion places you could go to have people produce your events. And part of what we've really tried to lean into is like not like is really committing to that values and community piece, partly because my personal background is coming out of working in social movements and in like social impact spaces. So it was a really easy part, like narrative of my story, but it's also where I already had relationships. So that was natural. But then I feel like we tried to really build on that as this is actually what makes us unique and particularly well suited for a specific type of client who doesn't want the like AI generated type, like it feels like we would have like a somewhat similar audience. Or who like doesn't want like design bros to come make their logo, but who feels like, oh, like this team understands some of my experience or some of my values in a way that might not even be tangible. So I have just found that really leaning into that motivation you have can shape, like Claire said, the strategy and then also inform your messaging. And being overt about it can be really quite helpful. Yeah. hmm We probably have time for like one more question or so before we start moving towards closing. If there's anything else anybody wants to pose or chat about together.
Thank y'all for the questions that you shared. I sort of say like the other thing that's coming up for me, maybe more from what Julian shared, is also this desire sometimes that happens to be like true with your story. And sometimes I think that means people feel the need to be comprehensive or like really share like where I came from and how I came about this. It's like if you're in an interview and someone says, "Tell me about yourself." And often people want to say, like, "Well, I went to school here and I studied this," and then and they'll sort of answer it chronologically. I think that in really strategic messaging, it's like you can approach that however you want. We are so rich with experiences, and think of it more like you have this wonderful treasure chest and you get to choose what you pull out and sort of showcase and share. And it doesn't make it any less true if you're highlighting something that's maybe wasn't actually as formative to you as this other thing, but that other thing isn't, you don't want to share your trauma, you don't want to share whatever, right? Like it really is up to you. And so I offer that as like when you're thinking about your story, you don't need to be comprehensive. You don't owe anyone that. And I think the last thing we have on here is just ways to stay connected. So I'm so glad to talk with all of you and thank you for sharing a few questions and just a little bit more about where y'all are at. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn or over email, claire@fieldnotecoms.com. And I'll pass it to Lee.
Well, first of all, just thank you so much, Claire, for being here today and for sharing your wisdom with us. And yeah, I've learned a lot. I can tell folks were taking a lot away from their questions and engagement. And I also really want to thank all of you all for joining us. This is only the second of the foundation sessions that we've put together. This is really, our public programs are really one of the ways, building on the conversation we were just having with Crystal, one of the ways that as a small business, we're really trying to step inside of our values of connection and care and collaboration and figure out how to make a bridge between those values and our need to pay rent and support our team. And so I really appreciate you all for being a part of that. And yes, these are ways that you can stay connected with us through our website directly, through our Instagram, and also we're on LinkedIn. We also, if you want to kind of have direct access to us through or information about our upcoming programs, You can sign up for our newsletter on our website, which I can also throw here into the chat, the direct link for that. And yeah, if you're feeling ready to launch into a full build of your brand, please reach out to Claire to dig more into her work. Of course, we're also really happy to talk to you about your brand messaging or taking things into your visuals or your website design or even a full brand launch party through our events team. But we're also really excited to just kind of stay in community with peers, with other folks who are doing big, important, interesting things in the world. So you can find out about our next foundation sessions, which right now are scheduled for March, through all those different ways of staying connected with us. We'll be blasting it out into the world. And finally, while we are a for-profit business, our public programs are sponsored or are fiscally sponsored by Next River, which is a really important kind of different type of cultural strategy organization based in the Bay. And through them, you can make a donation to our public programs, or through our website, you can make a donation, and through Next River, it can be tax deductible. And so I dropped the link to that in the chat as well. Thank you all so much for being here with us. And we technically have 6 more seconds. I mean, six more minutes, 6 seconds, sure. So I will hang out for a second if anybody has any last things they want to ask or chat about. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and look forward to seeing you at the next session.